It's today in EVE Online, April 29th, 2020. This is Matterall here with a whole host of friends. You'll see them speak up as they decide they want to talk. We're going to go right to Dotlan. And look at the statistics. Once again, I want to point out Alliance movements for the last 7 days have all been positive. That's people joining. Nobody's leaving anywhere, which is kind of interesting. Caleb, are you in here?
Yep.
All right.
I'm just reading Google's new rollout of Google Meet to compete with Zoom and everything else. So a little bit hyped about that one. Up to 250 people in the call. Like, what?
Yeah, I'll be having...
I think that's the standard, though. I think a lot of them offer up 250.
With video.
Well, Teams will do it, but only 4 cameras at a time, not 250 cameras at a time.
Yeah. Did you see...
If you haven't noticed, it when it runs, it's extremely easy to crop compared to other video sources. So I was just thinking that maybe it was something we would experiment with the YouTube rollout. So.
Yeah, we're looking.
Yeah, I was on a conference call this morning. I had my background as a Lighthouse of Halifax. So I like that whole customizations. I never looked at customizations and features like that in video conferencing, but now it's become a thing.
We're looking at things to do with, well, I mean, it's a good time to learn about technology, but it's also a good time to experiment with TIS to see what works. We've been playing with the new functionality that doesn't exist yet for 80% of, is it 80%? Maybe 95% of Discord. But for the 5%, there's you can have video and screen sharing at the same time in a channel. And that opens up a lot of possibilities for us because it shows you who's talking. It shows you their face if they have a camera, and it shows you their desktop. So you can really do a lot of cooperative gameplay and cooperative learning. Good idea. One of those.
Yeah, that rollout was interesting because when they originally did the Go Live rollout, it was the Go Live feature was first rolled out to servers that were partners, the larger servers. Now for this new feature with video, all my very, very tiny Discords have it. Any Discord that actually has a plethora of people, like Talking in Stations, some of my other ones, they don't have the video feature yet.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about that is TIS is becoming kind of going back to the roots and becoming more of a living center rather than a podcast per se. It's going to be more of a place where people are talking, people are learning, people are exchanging. That's always what we've wanted.
We basically wanted walking in stations, but outside of EVE.
Yeah. And it's mostly around EVE Online. So you'll see some construction in Discord. Some channels are changing places. Our administrator, Titalis, is fixing some things. And we're experimenting with technology. And the shows are going to get changed a bit too. Like we're going to try to do this every day. In fact, we're going to try to do this twice a day. Try to do this show here, EVE today, or today in EVE Online. There's not that much news to cover, but if we do it twice a day and just give off the information that we have, I think it'll be more of a living river of information rather than a collection of podcasts. We gotta break that mold of being a podcast. The other thing we're going to do is interesting. Anybody who has a podcast or even wants to make a podcast has something to say. We want to be a place that you would come to learn how to do it and then we would distribute it. So you don't have to do a lot of it yourself or a lot of the scary stuff for yourself. And you get access to a big audience. So we're going to be able to now, for the first time, turn Talking in Stations podcast into Talking in Stations broadcasts, which is anybody's anybody's podcast will get through on that. And that allows a diversity of voices. And we could do that even if you host the files yourself and you have your own podcast, you have your own site, you have your own setup. We can still put you in our RSS feed now. So we figured out how to do that. So that'll be kind of cool.
And if they were streaming from YouTube, we might actually be able to easy mode a picture-in-picture like screens of all the streamers that are currently streaming as a background stream for TIS.
Wild. It'll look like The Fly. Or look like the...
or look like The Matrix, right?
The Matrix.
You got like 9 cams running and showing what's actually happening live on 9 different streamers.
Yeah, how funny. Anyway, so those are some of the future plans that we have at TIS. There's more than that. We are accepting applications or requests to become a contributor. So if you feel like you can contribute to TIS or want to be a part of it, just let one of us know. And recruitment is open for talking in stations. Again, we're looking for a diversity of voices. You don't have to have a big name. You don't have to have a lot of game experience. We just want to hear from you if, the tone matches and you're here for good reasons. Then we want to hear from you. Okay. Let me take it from the top. It's Today in EVE Online, April 29th, 2020. I am Matterall here with Caleb, Arya, and more friends. And we're going to look at the stats and then go into what happened with CCP's power last night. It seemed to go out. And when you mix a power outage with incentives to log in that take you to abyssal space, which is very dangerous because the NPCs are very, very lethal, that's a bad combination. So we saw like 6 pages of dead capsuleers show up on Z Killboard yesterday. All of them killed because they were disconnected and the NPCs ravaged them. Okay, let's have a look here at Empire region. Most dangerous region in the last 24 hours is Lone Trek. This is a funny trend. Lone Trek has been ticking up that list. It's got 3,600 ships destroyed with 550 pods. I wonder if that has to do with the power outage. Most dangerous region in nullsec is by far less dangerous than Empire space, and that is Catch at 975 ships destroyed, but a lot more pods, 684. Now, why do we read pods? Because when your ship explodes, your pod is an escape pod. It pops out, and you have one chance to get away. And so what happens is people will catch those pods, and they'll destroy those pods, and at that point, your corporal body is destroyed and your memory is sent through the gate network that's all around New Eden, and your memory reconstitutes in a different body. In other words, you were cloned back to life somewhere else at your home station. So that shows intent. When a pod is killed, it means a player killed you and then went the extra step of really killing you. Okay, so Catch number 1 at 975, Delve number 2 at 589, and Providence number 3 at 503. There's Providence again. What do we know about Providence? And we talked about it yesterday. I'm not sure it was 100% accurate because I heard some buzzing around about it, but I think it was mostly accurate. As a group there, let's have a look at them. We'll go back and start to clear up anything that's not right. There was a big battle in H6 TAC, and that belonged to TRC, which is the Rogue Consortium, I think. New group, mostly or partially Korean, but not completely. And they are working in cooperation with RC, which is Wrecking Crew. And they are in cooperation, and we know this because Wrecking Crew SRP shows up in their literature. So that's a pretty direct link. If Wrecking Crew is paying for your ships to be fixed, you're probably in cahoots with them. And they occupy these the northeastern part of Providence if you're looking on Dotland. I don't understand what their intentions are, but they are taking Sov and they're hostile, which is not usually the case. Normally in Providence, the culture of Providence has been people roam into it. They don't live there. They roam into it from other places. And occasionally a group like a Northern Coalition will sit in Derelict and stage a couple systems out of Providence and then roam into it. They don't actually take space. But here you have some people taking space. Maybe they have plans, designs on the whole region. Totally legitimate to try to take over Providence. Not saying you shouldn't do that. Just saying traditionally Providence has defended itself with CVA and the rest of the Provi holders. And they usually have the blessing of bigger alliances because it's just, that's what the culture is. Like people like it as a hunting ground, not as a place to try to dominate. And in current, long time ago, it used to be AAA that defended them out of catch, right? Big, powerful group would sit over Providence and use it to just kind of play around. But whenever it was threatened, AAA would make sure nothing happened. Then AAA got mad at Providence and threw them out at one point, but let's not go there. Now, these days, it's totally changed. It's now Legacy that sits over Providence. You have Brave sitting in catch mostly, I think. And so Providence can probably get some sympathy out of Legacy to come help them out when there's a bigger fight. That said, there are people that are in Providence. There is Noir's Pirate Fortizar, which is a marketplace for pirates to park. It's in Freeport, and it's to encourage people to stick around and skirmish. Another group that's in Providence and has been for a long time is HTP. That's Honorable Third Party. Those are I'm drawing a blank. Black Ops. Hot droppers, basically. And I was friends with them for a long time. And they're just so good at what they do. Or at least they were like 5 years ago. And I think they continue to be good. There was one incident where I was in NC. This is about 2 years ago. We were moving through Providence. I don't think we were sticking around. No, we were actually coming into Providence. We were trying to back up Pandemic Legion when they were fighting over the stations against Test. So we came into Providence, and I was on a Fortizar with what was my Sino ship, because I was moving some bigger ships through, and I needed a Sino, and the Sino was off of an HTP Fortizar. And so the HTP guy takes his, I think it was a battleship, and he rams my ship. He just flies right at it, and he rams it, and it bounces my ship way off. So my ship goes flying, but I left my Sino behind. So then he cuddles into the Sino and hides like a spider, waiting for somebody to try to pick off the Sino, realizing it's a big not realizing it's actually HTP. And I'm sorry, and the HTP guy would be able to tackle whatever attacked it because he's free. He's not part of that Sino. So that was a really interesting and clever trick that HTP was pulling, and they just are full of those kinds of tricks, and they're a fascinating group. Mixed record as far as behavior, I think, because they're pretty ruthless, but they're technically incredibly good hot droppers. All right, so that's my update on Providence. Some interesting things happening there. Try to get my head around them. If you guys have information, if I'm mischaracterizing, you're always welcome to write me or come on to the show and speak for yourself. All right, it's enough of Providence today. Oh, actually, I didn't know this, but Base Hunter lives in Providence, right?
So I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah, he's running around there in mining gear. So if you see a miner whistling a tune by himself, that might be Base Hunter. So that's interesting. He's for those who don't know Base Hunter, like me, because I'm older. He is DJ, I think, musician. I think he was in Goons when he first showed up, but he left them, and he's now doing his own thing in Providence. So he's hanging around there. I think he just wants to be a part of EVE Online, not carry a lot of the trappings of any identity, more or less. But I think that's pretty
old
cool.
is a bit harsh. He's been
I'm
sort
old.
of notable for like 15, 20 years now.
Well, it shows you how old I am because yeah, it's like, I mean, if you're talking like dark wave Depeche Mode, that's probably where my influences are. Right, Caleb? You're my pal in this, right? He's not going to admit it.
Gone quiet.
Okay, let's go on here. Most violent systems. Zeroing in on systems, there's nothing that seems to be happening in the last 3 hours. A few fights here and there. Yeah, the silence is telling. He doesn't want to admit that he's my age. But if we look at the last 24 hours, you see a clearer picture of stuff happening in Catch and Venal and Tenerife's. Not huge fights, so we won't go in, but I'll just read off the top three. VTAC 3 in Catch has 400 ships. And K3JR in Venal. I think those are just typical numbers, so I won't go into those. For low-sec systems in the last 24 hours, it's Tama, Aonen, and Pokenen. Those are all Lone Trek and Citadel. Lone Trek, again, is... Some's going on Lone Trek. 3,600 ships destroyed. That's more than the Forge. That is not usual. Okay, most violent NPC systems, since we have no wormhole data anymore, CCP took that away because it was too much information for wormholes. But as far as the last 24 hours in NPC kills, you have Outer Passage leading the way with, that's a UTAC F system, has 42,000 NPCs destroyed. Rounding out the top three is Paragon Falls and Cobalt Edge. Those are all drone regions, Horde territory, so they're working hard there. Delve doesn't really kick in until 6th position at 7 UTB. That system has 23,000 ships destroyed. That's in the last 24 hours. You know what's happening here? Just looking at the NPCs is Horde's actually getting in on this. So it's going to be interesting to see what the April economic report looks like. If Horde, Fraternity, and Goon Swarm, between all those groups, which one comes out on top? Okay, I was going to go to see if there are any funny kills. I think this... we just watched this Fortizar get destroyed by a wrecking machine. That just happened a few minutes ago. And I was trying to figure out where it was because they had it covered up. But now we know it was in Cinq-les-Sons at Atier, or Atier. So that belonged to a group called Devil Bear. Let's have a look in it, see if there was anything extraordinary. No, I think it looks pretty standard. Rigs are all made for missile flight, so that's defensive. So they had, as far as rigs go, and this is what you look at. When you look at a Fortizar, the most important part of it is probably the rigs, because that's what the extra power is. The service modules will tell you what a Fortizar can do, but the rigs will tell you how powerful the Fortizar actually is when it does its thing. And so you look at the rigs to figure out how they configured this Fortizar mostly. In this case, we look at the rigs and we see that stand-up LSAT target acquisition, stand-up LSAT missile flight processor, and stand-up LSAT electronic warfare expert system. Those are three systems that are built to make defenses stronger. Didn't help in this case. That Fortizar still went down. So if it was built to defend itself, it might have been a headquarters. It might have been a strategic structure, as opposed to a structure that was maybe trying to sell things or build things or or other things, whatever FortiZars are used for these days. Okay. Moving on. Oh, Caleb's back. Hey, back me up. We're dark wave generation, aren't we?
What?
We're talking about Bass Hunter and how it's like,
Oh my god.
I don't know his
Classic
music.
music.
I don't know his music, but I did go and listen to him after I heard he was playing EVE Online. And interesting guy. And
yeah, that was very hot in the early days of the interwebs. It was almost memey.
Yeah.
Well, now one of his most famous songs has seen a resurgence and has become a meme once again. Good old Dota.
I still think he really should go ahead and do something with changing the lyrics to some of his songs to EVE Online related stuff. Because sitting in EVE Online and mining some Royd just fits, I think.
Well, look out for Reddit later tonight for the latest, hottest meme and maybe some little song lyrics. I'm looking at you, Volta.
All right. Let's go back to this over 10 billion ISK kill list that I'm looking at here in Z kill board. There was another same group lost. God, that was not that long ago. Lost. What is that? This is the engineering platform, but I forget what the actual name is.
It looks like Pirat has started with the demolition thing a bit prematurely, right?
Pirat, you could say?
Yeah,
Asbel.
The patch for the low fuel, the low powered state is not hit yet, so I wouldn't expect this level of demolition crewing to be happening, but that's pretty much what they seem to be doing.
No, I think it's clearly they put a contract out on these guys and they basically cleaned them up. So that's the Wrecking Crew takes out Devil Bears, Fortizar, and Asbel. So it's an engineering complex which was destroyed and probably their headquarters. And that's too bad. It's, they're probably a small group trying to do their own thing, got taken out by Wrecking Machine. We don't know if there's politics behind it, but that's what happened earlier today. And also you see that this is a good rivalry. You have Army of Mango, Nyx going down to Fraternity. Those are both groups that are generally Chinese, and they do not like each other. So that's what's happened today.
So maybe in the end, when HiSec matures in a near future, maybe Pirat can become the HiSec police force working under TTT.
We probably need to get a better grip on what's happening in HiSec, and especially, well, I don't know. I think this next patch that's coming in a little less than a month here, the May patch, that is going to usher in abandonment mode for structures, which is going to make a lot of structures easier to destroy, at least the ones that don't have any fuel. I think that's going to be just widespread, mostly in, well, I just don't know. I mean, where are the extra structures that are just completely abandoned and people aren't using them anymore? Are they in high sec, low sec, or null sec? Wormholes?
I think primarily in null. The whole Astro Hut, porta potties, and all that bullshit.
Porta potties.
Mostly in. Well, that's what they are. They're completely abandoned. They are hunting perches and porta potties and almost abused, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to put this here, and then you can't do anything.
It's like people running around old construction sites and the porta potties are left behind.
Exactly.
They're just going to perch in there and wait till somebody comes by to hit over the head with a pipe. Oh boy, great imagery.
But yeah, they're going to get cleaned out, and then it's also going to potentially start creating the whole idea of actual sieges, where you can actually deny someone the ability to refuel. At least if these things are going to have a change and a rebalance in the fuel mechanics.
Okay, CSM 15. The application period has opened. If you feel like running for CSM, check out the rule set. And we do know that you have to do, I think, 4 requirements, one of which is to write your story And then I think you write a little bit about your opinions or something. But we can look now on the forums, which is the place where you would generally do this. I think it might be the legal place to do this. And we can just read off the list here who the people were that have already signed up for CSM 15. Your candidates so far are Zanuria. He was a former CSM member. Jurius Doctor, running again. He ran last time. And he is... what's his Iron Guard?
He's Iron Guard. He's my
right.
corp mate.
Yes, Iron Guard. And then you have Mike Azaria, former CSM member multiple times and proprietor of the, what is it? The school bus?
Magic school bus, yeah.
The Magic school bus, yeah. So he goes around giving ships to kids or new players and making sure they always have a second ship so they don't quit. It's a nice thing to do. You also have Icarus Casil. So high security. I like this because in his title, he doesn't just put his name or her name. He says high security, new players, and corporation mechanics. So that's telling you a little bit about his platform. You also have Prospector Shiplock, and that's, I don't know who that is. I was actually reading who that was before, but I didn't finish. You have Vily. He's a current CSM member, leader of Test. He's running for a second term. You have Torvald Uruz, who is a friend of our show. Nice guy. People knew him from his streaming. He's very good at the one-on-one PvP that happens in Abyssal Space. You have Blazing Bunny from CSM 15. This is his second run. And he's from NC. He's an FC there. One more, a couple more. Phantomite, CSM. Phantomite is, I believe. Oh, I should know this. He's been hanging around here, but I want to say he's, I'm drawing a blank. I keep wanting to say HK, but it's not HK. It is Snuff. Another group like HK.
No, sorry. Haven't been in Snuff for a little while.
Oh, got that wrong? You were in Snuff, though.
I was for a very long time. So,
okay.
It's not irrelevant for you to say that, really, I guess, to be fair to you.
Thank you. All right. Well, here he is, Phantomite. We'll talk to him a bit more. And then finally, Brisker Ball running for the second time. The first time he actually won and then was unceremoniously thrown off for leaking that turned out not to be sufficient evidence, I guess. So they went back and they revised their finding and they reinstated him. No, they didn't reinstate him. He quit or something. He didn't come back because I think it was almost the end of the term anyway. But he did secure the right to run again, and he is engaging that right. So he is running again.
So it's basically two certain members, right? Already, Brisk and Vily are almost certainly going to be shoehorned in, and then the rest is a lot of smaller ones or not yet established names, right? With the exception of maybe Mike Alsarai.
All these guys will tell you that it's never a sure thing and you got to vote. So we'll start with that. So don't take it for granted that they're going to get in. But likely winners will be Vily because he has a coalition behind him. And he came in number fourth place last time, which is a really good showing considering how strong some of the candidates are with a built-in vote, like an Aerith or a Gobbins. The only upset surprise was Omeka came in at third place. And he doesn't have a coalition, but he has a lot of alts, and he has a lot of friends with alts. So
he made an amazing video.
And he was popular from a video, which is the same way that Brisk Rubal got a lot of notoriety. Yeah, putting up a good campaign video in Reddit seems to be a good recipe for CSM because it's all about name recognition, and you need to get your name out there.
It's all about the memes.
Well, the meme helps it stick, but it doesn't necessarily get you elected.
Certainly gets people talking about you. You have any idea how much hate mail?
Well, you can do memes and not get the same traction, but it does help. I mean, Reddit has about I'm going to estimate here, if you look at the success of articles and how many people read them and that sort of stuff, you get about 2,000 to 3,000 people reading, or so it's about this. It's about the same size as all Eve communities. Its potential is much bigger than that, but it's about 3,000 regulars. So if you can get yourself in front of 3,000 regulars and entertain them and gain their favor, like Brisk Rubal did, like Olmeca did, then and like many people before them, I'm thinking of Chance, right? Chance Levine or Chance. Who is Bomber? Not Bomber's Bar, but it is. Gosh, I'm so bad with names. Anyway, it's happened before. It'll happen again. Getting yourself in front of Reddit, getting some favor there. That's good. It's a good idea. Those are your candidates so far. Those are the people that have applied or are on their on the way to, are in the process of applying, on their way to becoming candidates. We'll see what happens.
And we've kind of, we're expecting at least 2 of the Goon candidates to run again, right?
Sure, at least. Brisk might be one of them. Who knows? He's the initiative will probably be endorsed by Goon Swarm to some degree, but who knows where.
Yeah, he's got to be like 3rd or 4th on the ballot would be what I expect.
And yesterday, I buried the lead, Kenneth Feld from PL is also running. He announced yesterday on this program. So you haven't seen his work up here yet. So look out for Kenneth Feld. He is a massive industrialist. And there he is in the audience. All right, cool. So that's it so far with who's running. So let's talk about yesterday. It was kind of funny. I'll bring up there is a new event to log in and to kill Triglavians. If you can go into Abyssal Space and kill some Triglavians, you're going to get SP. So of course people are doing that. But then the power went out and NPCs, they kept playing, right? Because the connections were broken, but the servers kept running. So people were all disconnected and they couldn't do anything, but the server kept running. So the NPCs unceremoniously wiped out their competition. So all the players lost their ships if they were in the middle of fighting. So bad combination, incentives to go into dangerous space and then the power going out or the disconnects going out. And according to Maya Cowboy, it is still broken.
I had a thing only 10 minutes ago where just like all of us in space just froze in place, and it took like 60 seconds for us to all start moving again.
Yeah, I'm hearing that there's a combination of issues. Some people are pausing like you just experienced. I think we have one member in the TIS staff try to dock for 5 minutes before he was able to dock. And then others are saying they're getting mass disconnected, I guess, depending on where you're located.
Last night we were chasing a scimitar that was burning like 1,000,000 kilometers a second or something like that.
So CCP said yesterday, or maybe about 14 hours ago, we are currently experiencing network issues with Tranquility. Our engines and partners are at work. Sorry, our engineers and partners are at work on the problem right now. We'll keep you posted. Let's check Eve status again right now, see if they mentioned anything else. So 11 hours ago, they said service should be restored to the majority of players. In the event there are still some of you unable to connect, please bear it with us. Our team is working through any remaining issues. And apparently, right now, there are still some remaining issues.
So I know that CCP can't give explicit details right now of what's going on, but I think from a player perspective, I would like to know if it's something in the data center, so where it doesn't matter if I use a VPN or not, my connection might be unstable. Or is this something I can use a VPN, kind of get around, and then maybe run my Abyssal sites using a VPN?
Yeah, and this is really funny. When you see the Abyssal triangular language on a ship, that means it was destroyed by Triglavians. And you can see a bunch of people were caught this time too. And Triglavians, unlike other NPCs, will pod you like a player.
It's also a function of abyssal space. If you don't complete it in the allotted time, you just get potted and lose your ship. So that might also be what's happening.
Oh, thanks, Leek. That's an absolutely great point. So nobody's coming out alive.
Yeah, you get disconnected in abyssal space, you're pretty much just dead.
Here it is. Here's the pages of pages upon pages of people just dying in abyssal space.
I bet that the support queue every time there's like an occasional server hiccup, like where even if it just disconnects, even if it's only just a single disconnect and then it works again, I bet the support queue for abyssal losses just immediately fills up. That must be such a pain for them to have to deal with.
Yeah, I think somebody said like, "Whoa, that's a lot of ISK loss," and somebody said, "No, it's a lot of repair tickets because everybody's going to get reimbursed for their ships."
Because yeah, I mean it's quite right to petition it. CCP can't make the servers be 100% perfect all the time, so there's always going to be hiccups. It's just I wonder if they thought about when they were designing the Abyss. I wonder if they thought about mass disconnects and how that would increase their workload.
So this is probably the best way to see it. Recent activity for Triglavians. I can't translate the language, but you can see they're just gobbling.
You can translate it. It's a character to character translation.
Yeah, does anybody even really love the game if they haven't learnt by heart the Triglavian language?
Yeah, right. All right, well, I do this. Why don't you tell us about yourself, Phantomite? Since you're running for CSM, you probably want people to know what you're looking to do.
Thank you. I'm looking to increase what player skill can get you in the game. I think that there's multiple areas, and so many of these areas are interlinked. Like, for instance, capitals and structures are strongly linked together in terms of how you would look at adding, removing, or balancing anything in that space. But if I was to pick one particular example, capitals in EVE Online, it used to be in the past that you could get amazing performance out of quite a lot of capital ships if you were smarter in how you played the game and how you involved and planned your support that came along with that capital ship or with those capital ships. The way I see it now is that it's essentially using those ships. Pretty much everybody gets one of the best results out of these without needing to have as much experience planning, without needing the support that capital ships previously had. The way I'd like it to be is I would actually like capitals to be perhaps even more powerful in the hands of the smartest, best planning players, and on a scale down to almost completely useless in the hands of people who have no idea what they're doing. I feel that it's a loss of depth and a loss of an advantage for planning and forethought in those there. So I don't want to buff them. I don't want to nerf them. I want them to have a vast scale of effectiveness depending on your smarts. And that counts for how you engage them and how you engage with them as well.
Cool. You want to tell us a little bit about your history? I guess we can read your entry into the forums, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so I joined Eve in about at some point in early 2007, and I can point to one particular event in Eve Online that attracted me to it. 2007 was when I got my first job, and upon getting my first job, I was like, right, now I have a job, I'm going to play my first MMO. And I picked EVE Online because I had just read in the UK edition of PC Gamer magazine a 5-page article about the Istvan Shigatsu. What was the corporation they infiltrated?
The Guiding Hand Social.
Guiding Hand Social Club infiltrate that made that story that everybody knows about. You know what I mean, anyway.
Yubiko Saraf.
Bingo, nice one. I read that and I thought that, okay, that's the world that I want to take part in. So with those kind of ideas of big bad universe where everything is nasty and you can be nasty and you can gain fantastically, I joined the game and decided that I wanted to be a hauler.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
About
like your style.
3 days into looking at my options and working towards an Iteron Mark 1, I joined up with some people who were playing Eve from a forum that I was a member of, and instantly got hooked on PvP. And and I do have that big bad jump freighter now, but it wasn't my original aim in the game.
Oh, I like that. I like your approach. It reminds me of coming into a group where you're foreign and you politely lurk for a while until you figure out, like, I think I can contribute. And then you contribute. And that psychology just makes sense in the game. It makes sense in talking in stations. People come in and listen, just kind of hang around and listen. And then eventually they find an opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, it's I came into the game, after reading about one thing that had happened. I came into the game from that with a completely different idea of what I wanted to accomplish in it. And within days, I had completely changed my mind again. I mean, pretty much all the other games that I seriously play are all kind of construction and management games, stuff like that. I don't play a whole bunch of PvP games. It's just EVE Online where I do that to what I regard as a serious extent. And I think that probably says something about the uniqueness of Eve, in that I can be one kind of player, but in Eve I completely obsess about something wildly different to everything else that I'm a fan of.
Yeah. I think it's a great approach to the game. I think that's the long burn, really. If you come into, what is Eve? You sit down and you're eating dinner, a dinner that somebody's prepared for you. And if you go right for like the good stuff and fill up fast and you're like, I'm done here, and take off, fine. You get into the high-end PvP, seek glory. You like the adrenaline rush. If these are the things that are stimulating you, at a certain point, you'll be like, okay, I think I've done it, if nothing else interests you. But if you're the kind of person that sits down and says, well, I'll save the best for last, or I'll distribute my appetite. I'll pace myself, and I'll have a little of this because I know it's good for me. I'll have a little of that because I should, or whatever. You're just going to enjoy that meal longer.
That article that was you linking it in Twitch chat, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That is the precise article. That is the genesis of me wanting to play EVE Online, in that link there.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. After, as I sort of grew in with PvP, I sort of started in low sec, did a little bit in null sec. Absolutely terrible, completely terrible, but it doesn't stop it from being fun if that's what you want to do. And from there, I think my first serious PvP group was that I eventually was able to join Outbreak, an incredibly old, classic PvP corporation in EVE, and I spent some time there. And I thought, and this has happened multiple times, I thought, this is it. I'm at the peak here. But that changed several times. I then moved on to another small group after Outbreak called Nibbletech, and when after just a few days with them, I thought, oh no, wait, this is the peak. This is even better. And after that, I spent some time in PL as well, and then I joined Snuffbox, and again I thought, oh wait, no, this is the peak. It just keeps on getting better.
Yeah. Peak after peak. So a little bit about that article that you read that inspired you, because it inspired a whole generation of EVE players, including myself, including Matani, including I think Katya Seya, if I'm not mistaken, like a diversity of players. This thing was called Murder Incorporated, 10 months of deception for 1 kill in EVE Online. And it was written actually in 2005. It didn't get popularized for at least a year. 2006 and 7 is when it started getting really popular. But the article was taken down from the internet, and you couldn't find it anywhere for years. And it was written by Tom Francis for PC Gamer, and I believe it was UK PC Gamer, not United States PC Gamer. And it was recently put back up on the internet, and now you can find it, which is the link that I provided you in channel. But it says November 26, 2015. That is not when this story was written.
I guess that's just when they put it up,
republished
that
it.
kind of thing. I like that the value that they're talking about here, because interesting how the value of what your billion ISK can get you has vastly changed over time. They're talking here about we got 717 million ISK from the corporate wallet, and that was a huge deal to them as well. They said our net gain from this massive heist is roughly estimated at 20 billion ISK. And we laugh at that now, but that went a lot further in terms of the power it got you at the time with the fewer players and the idea that battleships were, you just didn't see battleships being easily acquired, even down to that. Amazing.
Yeah, the contract itself was only 1 billion. 1 billion to bring down a corporation. You're talking about
1 billion
months.
a year for a year.
Yeah, months and months of infiltration, slow infiltration for 1 billion. Clearly, it was just for the act and the infamy rather than the money. But it's a great story and written incredibly well.
The real asset there is the I believe it was an Imperial Edition Apocalypse. It's listed there as an Amar Navy Apocalypse, but it lists it further up as an Imperial Apocalypse.
Which tells you that the writer wasn't completely sure.
I mean, I do know that it was literally an Imperial Apocalypse.
And we know.
I mean, I know that a Federation Megathron exists, but do any Imperial Apocalypses exist?
There was. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, Vily, if you know, but I think there was a total of 5 of them, and 3 were destroyed. 1 was destroyed here. 1 was it destroyed in the Alliance tournament? That might have been a second one, and I think there's 1 left, something like that.
I believe
I don't believe there was 1 destroyed. Yeah, Terex Thork may have lost 1, or I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure Entity still has 1, but
yeah, 1 still exists. Wasn't 1 killed in an Alliance tournament? It was a big moment where it came out, but I don't know if it died. But it was in there. Yes, and what's his name? Terex Thorax?
Tyrex Thork, or something like that.
Yeah, Terex Thork.
Who was actually a member of Guiding Hand Social Club as well.
Right. Yeah, and he was known early on in the first 4 or 5 Alliance tournaments as someone that would bring out blingy ships, which at the time wasn't that prevalent. Now, rare ships make appearances in the Alliance tournament more often, or they did before it was canceled. But anyway, too much about the story. We were talking about you. We'll talk to you more as the campaign goes on, but it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Oh, also, here's Itzvan Shagatsu. And he was the CEO of Guiding Hand Social Club, and he's the one that was interviewed for this, among other people. But the writer himself did such a great job just talking about EVE in really imaginative terms. You could see what one good article can do for a video game. It's amazing what it could do. It lit up a lot of people's imaginations. But Shagatsu is the person that is behind me when I'm doing my first speech at EVE Vegas, where I'm talking about the Illuminati. I say, who is this guy? Do people know? And nobody really screamed out the answer. So I think there's a whole generation of people who don't know who he was, what he did, that sort of stuff. But the funny thing is, I never told people during that lecture who he was. So it wasn't until the second time I went to do a lecture at EVE Vegas called The Continuum of War that I actually went back and finished and told people who it was. And that's how those two things are linked. All right. Well, what else is going on out there, you guys?
Oh dear, not a lot.
Well,
The
I
disconnect
will say
phase.
that the 5v5 scrims have become very successful, and in fact, quite a lot of the old Hydra Reloaded and Alliance Tournament players have actually made their return. Some of them yesterday came onto the 5v5 scrims, and they've taken long breaks ever since the Alliance Tournament has ended. And some of us, luckily, were able to get top secret access to all the doctrines and ships that Hydra Reloaded had been stockpiling for years, preparing for, any future Alliance tournaments. And some of us were lucky enough to be able to fly these doctrines and fittings and to try them out in the 5v5 scrims.
Oh dear, I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry. I'll say that one more time. You can check this out at 5v5 Scrims on Twitch TV. And this is the theory crafting spreadsheet that they have, which you can use, and you can practice your theory crafting. You have to do it under a certain amount of time in order to do it right. And we demonstrated that a few days ago with Casper when he came in here and showed us some of the doctrines, talked about every decision, how it would impact a fight. Good stuff. Yeah, sorry about the mutes. I do that so that my keyboard doesn't make noise as other people talk. All right, so I was asking if there was anything else from you guys, anything you're seeing out there? All right.
Nothing except the fact that CCP seems to be helping on the PLEX price tanking.
Oh, I did want to check Plex because it was dropping to 2.9, which is low.
Oh, it's way below that.
Sale thing, right? It was a 50% sale thing.
Some people believe that the reason for the price tank is because a lot of Chinese players are dumping their Plex stockpiles and are moving to the Chinese server. Surrender. I myself don't believe that would tank the Plex prices that much.
Yeah,
I think there's also one of my theories was that as new players are coming to EVE, those packs that you buy come with skins. I don't think they're the prettiest skin, but they come with free skins and Plex. And a player who starts with one of those packs could potentially sell that for money. Because I think it was Spot at one point said he's seeing a lot of sales to buy orders, which would mean people are dumping Plex.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if
I would like to dispute the whole migration thing at least, because from what we've heard from people from China that do play on TQ, they pretty much say that there's no plan to move to Serenity at all. On the contrary,
I didn't believe the idea of Plex tanking because of migrating players either, but there was one theory forwarded. As for why would people move server, I believe the new Serenity is completely reset, or am I wrong here?
You're wrong. It's
it's the same mold.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And it's also completely new design, right? Because it's a free-to-play model, so
that's the big deal.
Got very, very different monetization stuff and very different policies on how to run the actual server. So the people that currently, the Chinese that play on TQ, they don't seem to be incited in any way to actually move to Serenity. On the contrary, it's going to be a completely different population over there. But it could change if there is incentive appearing in some future. But I doubt it.
How about, let's go to some basic theory here. we had Hilmar on here last summer, and he was talking about how PLEX is actually a stable price, and the ISK value of it is what is in flux. It's the value of labor in EVE Online. We do know that mining is now more labor intensive.
Well, I don't think you should try and link it directly to mining. That's not really where it's linked. If it's linked to anything, it's linked to ISK printing.
NPC
from ratting activity instead of from
I was
mineral
going to
activity.
bring that
Mineral
up.
activity doesn't introduce any more money to the game.
Because the nominal cost of PLEX is going to be sensitive to how much money is coming into the game and how easy it is to actually print money for yourself.
Well, I said mining, but what I meant was scarcity, mineral scarcity. Maybe that's not, I'm still going up the wrong tree, but I'm wondering if money is becoming stronger. ISK is becoming stronger.
So
I think it's a psychological effect to the trade, because even if PLEX stays equal and stable, we know we're in a shortage phase. We know things are going to be going up in value. If you want to invest your money, you want to invest in the thing that's going up in value, not the thing that's stable, not the thing that's going down. Plus, you see PLEX starting to come down a little bit. That would incentivize, I think, anyone in the trading field to say, hey, this product is going down. These other products are going up. I'm going to shift my money.
I think the important number is that when you're looking at traded volume, it seems to be the same. So it's really about who is then supplying and how much are they willing to undercut and go down, right? So I think the theory of it being things like PLEX sales and packages and things like that, I think the source, and then of course, because of the market changes, there is the possibility that some of the old high frequency trading PLEX guys might be getting out of PLEX.
Right.
And of course, you also have the added argument that when everything is becoming scarce, then it will start to appreciate in value. That means that you don't want to be in PLEX. You want to be in the thing that is appreciating in value more so than PLEX.
Yeah, that's definitely, all these things probably play. But ByteFlux here says that it's deflation, and that's what CCP wanted. Isn't that true?
Well, yes and no. That's not entirely true, because that's not what you're seeing. You're not seeing a massive decrease in ISK availability in the game. That's not the faucet that's been turned off.
By the way, I'm looking at this chart, and at 2.6, that is way lower than it has been in multiple years. This chart only goes 1 year, but...
Is it at all possible that there is more PLEX around, but the volume hasn't changed because the same number of consumers are here?
Yeah,
Could that be a thing?
Yeah, this is the thing. That's also why when the sellers are coming in, especially new sellers, they're pretty much punching the floor of the buy orders, and that means that it's just going to keep dropping.
Could that be a side effect of a lot of people staying home at the moment and thinking, I'm going to play some EVE Online, let's buy some PLEX so I can get a chunk of ISK so I can play some EVE Online?
Yeah, very likely.
Especially if they're getting... especially if they may be getting paid stimulus check.
Yeah, very likely. And then because there's not the added pressure of alts and stuff like that, then you also get a bit of a reduction in the actual demands. It's usually then padded and rebalanced by the fact that we still have the whole zombie thing going on. SP farming is still a thing. And as long as that is profitable, it will still happen. And it's going to call it buffering of the actual price. I still think that you will start seeing the market hit a floor, but it didn't help that I think CCP just had a sale and then the influx of new players. So then it's just going to keep punching. It might go all the way back down to 2.5 before it starts turning. And again, this is also sensitive to how much of the growth continues, because if we suddenly start seeing the slump again, then it's just not going to happen.
It's entirely possible it could go down to 1.5. Like there's no brake mechanism on the PLEX market, right?
The influx is the brake mechanism. You need to keep punching it because its utility has remained the same.
I don't agree with that statement. Like to me, there's as long as if the number of players coming into the game continues to increase, it's a higher and higher percentage of possibility that you could see people willing to buy Plex to inject money into their account, which means the Plex supply increases. And unless you have people that are thus able and willing to spend ISK to give that money back to the player, or you know how the Plex system works.
Yeah, you're correct. If you keep having a growth of population in the game, and these new players keep being willing to actually put money to CCP, create Plex, and then supply. But then this is also it's going to slow down a bit, because you have to take into account that the players that then joined a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, they will be willing to actually then purchase the actual Plex that these new players are then selling. So it's going to have to. There's going to be a balance between the age of the youngest players and the influx of new players per day, right? So it will
Yes,
it will
but
have
one of the
floor.
one of the things you're not really considering here is the people who buy Plex with ISK, aka the people who sub their accounts with Plex, are generally much older players. And if the population density shifts more and more towards the newer players, as the influx of new players grows higher and higher, that density decreases and decreases. It takes a long time to age someone to the point where they're comfortable paying for 5 accounts with Plex, right? It's not a common thing. So
That's interesting. Where do we have that numbers on how old people are that generally use Plex, or like a comparison of, age of accounts compared to which percentage are likely to pay with it?
We don't have those numbers. That's all potentially internal anecdotal. We don't have it. We've never had it. Never been given it. So maybe the
Because
CSM has numbers like that.
I still pay with money, because I'm fortunate enough to be in a position, unlike some people, where I can pay with money. I mean, some people don't really have, which is why they go for paying with ISK. But yeah.
Well,
I think it's obvious. I think it's something we can assume because. Go ahead, Caleb.
No, it's just that I think that many old players, like Vily hinted at, has shifted to Plex because the utility and the benefit from subs have been undermined by the Plex prices and the easy availability of resources and ISK, right? So I hope that this new scarcity thing will potentially shift that, but as long as you're seeing this crash, people will still have way too much ISK and way too many access points to get more ISK to make it valid for them to change to a sub. And I think CCP should try to figure out how to make subbing more valuable again.
Wow.
Yeah, it was said in chat, 20-year-old won't pay for Eve, but baby boomers will sub. And it really has nothing to do with age. Financial status will vary depending if you're young or old. I think, though, new players are less apt to use Plex for their accounts because they haven't established an income stream inside the game where they want to dedicate it to buying Plex and subbing through it.
I don't think you can say that the younger generation player base is less likely to want to pay actual money. I think it's actually almost the opposite. I think the older player base is less likely to want to spend money on things like subs or even buying Plex because it's not necessary for them, because they will have the direction to the income streams that makes it not necessary, right? It's too easy to make money in EVE, especially when you are older. So it's actually the younger generation, I think, that feeds the majority of the ISK, real life money to CCP, and thus tanking the values.
An interesting thing I'd like to see the data on is, and it'd only be CCP that could, find this information, is I would like to see if there is any correlation between likelihood to pay money or likelihood to pay with Plex. I'd like to see the correlation to what activities those people take in the game. Because what I think would be most interesting is if the data showed that there was no correlation. A lot of people might assume that the vast majority of plexing may be people who maybe don't engage in PvP. But I've got a feeling from I hang around with quite a lot of PvPers, quite a lot of them pay with Plex. I might bet that there could be no correlation.
In my experience, they are very rare to share that kind of back-end stuff with the CSM or with the players in general. That's the kind of data set they'd have to go and dig for it directly and try to put together a tool to figure it out. And other than our edification of this is interesting, I wonder what it means. I don't know if they really would do that. Unfortunately, it would be interesting to see.
You guys want to continue, or should we call it a day?
I just got here.
I know.
Well, I'm just puzzled at the monetization model that they're running. That they keep doing these sales on Plex, but they don't really do anything similar to subs.
Wait, is there a Plex sale?
There was at least some got an email. I think it was yesterday. But the point is that you would want it to be more valuable to sub efficiency wise, right? So if I buy a sub for an entire year, I should really get a very, very nice price. And I don't think that CCP has been doing that lately, at least not to compare with the sales on Plex.
But Caleb, you know why that is, right?
No, I'm legitimately asking because you would rather want longer term players than people that might just Plex up or create ISK for their entertainment. I think getting dedicated players that are going to potentially come back at least, if not every day, then I'm just saying that subs have the potential to be as effective as this whole login padding stuff and infinite Plex sales. I don't understand it.
Caleb, it's simple. The cost of 500 Plex on the website is $19.99 US dollars. The cost of a 1 month sub is $14.99. They make more money selling Plex than they do subs. And if you do a year-long sub, you're getting the cheapest rate. It's like $10. I do year-long subs for all my accounts because it is the cheapest way to play the game in the long run, other than spending hours and hours and hours of time, doing PvE that I would rather not do in order to Plex my account. So I don't do it. So at the end of the day, that's why I'm pretty sure they have stopped doing all of the. They used to do around Christmas time a year-long sub sale, and that's when a ton of people would do their year-long subs. They don't do those anymore because it costs them money. They're doing this for money. And that's fine. I'm fine with it. I'd rather the Plex sales anyway, because I buy Plex to sell for ISK so that I can not have to crap.
But the irony is
I don't use Plex to sell for game time.
But the irony is that it potentially feeds the whole alt account mechanic, right? That's basically what's happening, because you get newer players to potentially then support and sell their Plex for ISK, and those Plex are going to be bought by all the players that are able to actually make money. Hell, it's even the thing that's feeding the SP farming, the zombies, right? That's the problem, that they have the pricing tag flipped in reverse of what would disincentivize this kind of what I call abuse.
Well, what do you think would happen if they tried to raise the sub rates to mirror the Plex rates? I think there'd be a giant pitchforks and people would freak out.
I flipped them. I'd say it 15 to buy the Plex and $9.99 to get the month sub.
Well, so a year-long sub is $10.50 a month. So that's about that number that you said, give or take.
Yeah, but it's not on a monthly basis. The savings should be potentially even greater when you keep getting these 50% off sales and 25% Plex sales. Why not go all the way and say, if you buy for a year, you're going to get it for half? I don't see why they don't do that instead.
They're already taking a haircut on those year subs. Like, to ask them to take more would be a little bit onerous. They're not like raking it in hand over fist. A different point, tangentially related. Skill point farming has been mentioned a few times in a negative light, negative tone, but I think that it's important to frame skill point farming for what it is. And what it is in the end is allowing the player to unbundle Omega, because Omega is actually a bundle. It's unlocks and also skill points, Because if you don't pay Omega, you don't get skill points beyond 5 million. A character cannot train that. So you get additional skill points that you would not otherwise get. You also get unlocks. You get the ability to run multiple accounts at the same time. You get the ability to use things you weren't able to use. There are a lot of players who have accounts and characters on which they only want the unlocks. They don't necessarily need those skill points. So the skill point farming allows them to get Omega either with Plex or with money, and unbundle the skill points and say, and turn that into currency in game. So they get the benefit that they want, and then they get money instead of skill points.
And there's also countries with different strengths of their economy. So for myself and Briss mentioned $10 a month or thereabouts for a year. Seems like it's real easy for us. But in other countries, that might be higher in terms of the conversion of the economy and the cost of living, which may incentivize those players to maybe Plex their accounts instead of paying for a subscription.
Well, I think it is important to realize, or at least to remember, if I can get my words out. I only had 1 cup of coffee today. The rate for subs changes based on region. So it's cheaper in Russia to sub than it is in the UK or EU than it is and it's more expensive in the EU to sub than in the United States. It depends on the region of the area of the game. And I've seen complaints about that on the forums and elsewhere. But, in the end, I don't know. Right now, the Plex market is in the toilet. And I would really like them to stop doing the sales. Earlier this year, it was crazy. Plex was out of control, and they need to do more sales. And now it's like, all right, it's below 3 million a unit. Please, can we roll the sales back a little bit because there's too much Plex on the market.
It's well below.
Economically, it's the same sort of problem that they had inside the game. It's pretty much because they want more cash and cash flow. They're doing all these sales and they're basically flipping. So they keep focusing on short-term instead of long-term revenue streams. And this is what I mean when I say there's a problem with the whole pricing model. And this goes for things like the next shop as well, the vanity items and stuff like that. Everything from CCP has historically always been upside down. They don't seem to understand how to get a permanent drive of cash flow and income stream. It just bothers me that especially with skins, the joke is that skins price wise is horrible compared to other games vanity items. It's just weird.
But it's not actually true, right?
But it is. It's a lot more expensive.
Well, Eve has something of a lot more of a unique problem where other games where people have cosmetic items that they can purchase, Eve's a little bit unique in that there are people with unimaginably orders of magnitude more wealth ready to spend money, like in-game money on things, because these items are traded essentially inside the game as well as direct microtransactions by spending Plex on things like that.
There's
all right.
Anyways, what I was just going to say is that compared to skins in games like League of Legends or many other games that are common with skins, the pricing for Eve skin models is not anything exceptional. Like, certainly some of the $6.95 Plex skins are a bit much, but just like any other game, there's those very expensive premium skins. It's no different than most the industry standard for the most part.
So Eve skins,
well, what's different
Eve skins are different from most other things in most other games, specifically because just about everything in Eve can either be destroyed or taken away, and skins never, well, not the volatile ones, but the vast majority of skins never can. So this makes it a unique item within this particular ecosystem. I would also suggest that not the entire economy.
Normal games. I'm confused.
Because in other games, you generally don't lose all your stuff. So
you don't lose your skins either as soon as you apply them.
Right. No. So I'm not saying that Eve skins are different from other games' cosmetic items. What I'm saying is within the context of Eve, skins are particularly valuable because they're one of the few things that can't be taken away. So that's.
Yeah. I mean, League of Legends, every match I lose all my stuff when I go to the next match. I start from scratch again, but I don't lose my skin.
Well, that's not a risk. That's you go in, like you play a match and then it's. It's not being taken away from you. It's like you never had it to begin with. It was like we play one round at a skin is something that that is not riskable in a world where everything is
Well, you can definitely risk a skin if you want. I go put it, an
right.
unredeemed skin in my cargo hold and run around.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm just saying it has this power. It has this unique position inside the Eve ecosystem as being something that is able to be kept forever when most things cannot. So
Well, it's a
that
paint job,
partially,
right? Like,
yeah, no, that
Now,
partially
but
speaks to the
Well,
reason why
on
it's
the
so
other
expensive.
side, and the other
Wait, hold
side,
on a sec. There is a very, very important thing in that these things are openly tradable on an internal economy where people have a vast disparity of wealth from people who have they're happy with a few million ISK, and some people who have billions, and some people who have perhaps a trillion ISK, or in some cases even more. And CCP does want to correctly cater to those people who want to pay with their unimaginably large in-game wealth as well.
You called?
I think the point, though, the difference, you can trade things. And I agree with you, Phantomite, that you can trade them, but once they're applied, then you're stuck. You can't do anything with it. And the fact that you can't pull them off the account or move them around makes them relatively unique in Eve, because it's one of those things where, other than like the Geno implant that's permanent, or for a pod, there's not a lot of stuff that you stick on your account that you can't take off or move around or trade at some point. The skins you can't. But I mean, honestly, the
Functionally
pricing
speaking,
model.
that implant is a skin.
Well, exactly, it is a skin. I mean, that's really all it is. Even though it was like pre-skin type stuff, but the pricing model for the skins, I think, is probably a little bit better than most of the other games. I mean, typically, other than like the most expensive bundles, the most expensive like Titan and Super Cap skins that'll be like the $6.95 that Vily mentioned, that are more than $20 a skin. You can get a ton of skins for 55 Plex. That's like $2.25 in real money if you break it down on current Plex prices. So, in the end, it's relatively cheap. The bundles have been going for like $4.50, so that's less than $20 for 4 or 5 skins plus, character in-game items for your character's, avatar. That's not bad. I think they've done a pretty good job of not going super crazy, with the $80 monocles and stuff from, the Greed is Good era back during Summer of Rage.
Yeah, and to be clear, like when I was making a point about how skins are different, I'm justifying their, in some cases, like they are something that is a luxury item. They're known to be a luxury item, and they have a special status in that they can't, once activated, they cannot be taken away from you. So that makes it kind of make sense that they are this expensive.
Well, I just want to point out that Plex has been, right now, is lower than it has been in about, 3 years, maybe 4 years. I haven't seen it at 2.6 million per unit, maybe 5 years. When it converted over from a single Plex to 500 units of one Plex.
it's not.
Tell me about it, Matterall. I'm down 874 billion.
Just lost value on the Plex drop.
Yep. All the Plex that I bought to buy myself into the CSM, that 5 point something trillion has just depreciated by like 16% or something.
To buy myself in.
What?
That was last year, right? When you were blocked by CCP.
No. It's this year.
This year? You're going to run?
It was this year.
Oh. Are you going to run?
I'm still not allowed to run.
Why are you not allowed to run Cable? I don't get it.
Because I've broken the EULA and the TOS previously.
All right, so you've been banned before?
I have been banned on an occasion where CCP accused me of account hacking, which I was proven innocent of in like 2 months because they were slow and went on.
Were there not a whole bunch of like RMT allegations back when you were with Skilly or something though?
Of course there were. There's always been RMT allegations against me, dude. But I've not been banned for RMTing, so guess what? I'm not RMT.
Anybody earning a lot of money that's going to follow.
I mean, if I'd been RMTing all the ISK I got from stealing blueprints and whatnot, would I have 5 trillion to just buy my way into the CS?
Well, it depends if you were earning 10 trillion ahead of that or not.
You know.
I'll be interested
I
to
actually
see
have
what
an
the
interesting
market
question
says
for you, Gable.
for buying
Now
ships.
that the capital shipyards have been adjusted so that it requires a freighter, and the opportunity is a little more fair, and you still end up with most of the blueprints, do you think the mechanical change was better?
Well, the reason why I end up with more of the blueprints is because I run 90% of all the Sotiyos.
You put in the work, absolutely, 100%.
Well, no, because the claim that was always put out, I don't know necessarily from you, but from a lot of other people as well, was that more people would run them now because they can't just be stolen by one guy in a DST. And that's complete bullshit because I'm still the person running 90% of all the Sotiyos.
I don't
Yeah,
know about
so it
90%,
seems,
but
well, it
You
seems
don't?
that it hasn't slowed you down. So is this really a
It-
negative change?
It's super fucking AIDS. Let's put it that way.
so, but it's a situation now where both sides actually have a chance if they're willing to put in the work, right?
Not really, because it's so easy for me to grief people out of getting the loot. Just look at XIX. They've run 4 Sotiyo so far, and we killed the loot every single. And it was not hard.
Yikes. Poor
That
guys.
seems like a play counterplay situation. Like they could do the same if they say.
There is no counterplay to 50 bombers shooting a fucking freighter that's.
Yeah, no, the counterplay is to do the same thing to you.
There's a variety of options, is what I'm saying, versus like who can sit on a wreck and press the scoop button fast. There's a variety of interesting options in the game now.
I would argue that it's worse than it was before.
Okay, if you're still of that opinion.
Well, you asked, so that's my opinion.
No, I know. I was just curious if your opinion had changed over time, that maybe this was for the better for people. But, okay.
I think
You're
it's
still making money.
worse. It's worse for people who try to get in on the whole. Far worse.
May I jump in? Where's the difference between pressing a loot button faster and killing a freighter tries to?
Number
the
of
looting
accounts,
mechanic
amount of
is the same.
coordination.
Yes, like if you are someone who tries to loot in many situations where you're under pressure, then that's your gameplay. Like I don't see why someone had to change the drop mechanic and the blueprint to a point where gameplay was disturbed only because people complained that they couldn't do it instead of trying to figure out a way to beat someone.
Because even in a perfect situation, the most you can hope for is a coin flip. There's no agency to the player
That's not true.
defeat your opponent. Yes, it is true. Absolutely true. How is it not true?
You allowed it to.
Not at all true.
It previously boiled down to that single critical moment when one person had to click one button, and it doesn't boil down to that single critical moment.
And that's not at all true, Fonsway. That's not at all true. And I've explained this 100 times to people, and people just ignore. Whoever is running the Sotiyo has the advantage of knowing the very split second that it's going to. If you are trying to steal a Sotiyo in the old system, I would have to guess. It's a calculated guess, but it's nonetheless a guess when it's going to die. And if I wait until after it's actually occurred, you have at worst a second head start.
I experienced the same thing when I try to steal from other people in high school. I know who's the target. I destroy the target, and now I have to get the loot before other people steal it. I do that on a regular basis, and I don't see why Cable has been nerfed because other people were too, how to say, not stupid, but complained and complained instead of trying to figure out a way to be faster.
Didn't even need to be faster, dude. They needed to just use their brains and think of ways to counter it. And I've explained on multiple occasions how they could do it. It wasn't hard. And I've done it myself to others. Because it's not hard.
But that's
It
sort of
wasn't hard.
that's sort of the question at hand, right? Is your knowledge enough that they could hire you to give them the information, or would you?
I gave it publicly on streams
and
several times.
I know you have cable. I'm just saying that it is a situation where they felt they shouldn't have to, and so they lobbied to make it so that they don't.
Well, I mean,
So
they
you're-
still do, kind of, because the looting mechanic is essentially the exact same. The only difference is you have to loot it in a freighter instead of a DST now. And I mean, it's easier to loot it in a freighter because you can just click loot all. You couldn't do that in a DST. You had to actually drag the fucking thing into your fleet hangar. So, like, the looting mechanic itself has not changed whatsoever. The only thing that's changed is the ability for people to grief people running them, and they've upped the entry level requirements to not be griefed or harassed when running them.
Right.
From your perspective, this is more difficult for you to accomplish now. You said
No,
you described
that's
it
not
as
at all
AIDS.
what I'm saying.
Well, no, you described it as AIDS. You said you don't like it. It's harder for you.
It's
compared to what it
impossible.
was,
There's
yeah.
a difference
Right.
between.
So hang on,
There's
we're
a
making a point
difference.
here. We're making a point here. So you said it's harder for you, right, Cable?
Harder for everyone.
Right. So it's harder for you. It's harder for everyone. But you're the best, right? No one's better at
Nobody does
that.
it but him
Is that?
anymore. I don't.
No, is that?
People still do it besides him.
Hang on. So you're if you're the best and it just got harder, doesn't that increase your own advantage?
Can someone explain to me how you want to warp in a freighter and steal something like that in while being shot?
Okay, no,
from
I would
another
like I would like Cable's take on that. If you're the best and it just got harder, wasn't your own advantage increased?
It didn't get harder.
It wasn't increased. It wasn't increased.
Impossible
It's the same. It like, for instance, let's say you're a new person that feels like, hey, I have a couple friends and we really want to try to run an NPC Sotiyo. Okay, guess what? It's now tenfold harder for you to do that because unless you literally keep the Sotiyo completely hidden from the public and it's not on Zkill and so on, where you can be literally left alone for several hours to figure this out.
So the gap between them and you is now wider because you're still able to do it, but other people are not. So the gap is wider, which is to your personal advantage.
Because it at the same time became significantly easier for null blocks to run them because they can just throw bodies at it. If you throw 30 fucking freighters onto the Sotiyo grid and just one of them gets it, it doesn't really matter if the 29 other freighters die because you got the prize regardless. And no other entity is going to be able to move multiple freighters out to that area of space. Like that, the
you
whole
personally have no counterplay to that.
Unless I literally bring my own 200 or 300 people or whatever, then sure I could. But
it hasn't happened.
It would still be like, what do you mean?
Does that happen? So now you've
what
shared
happen?
the counterplay.
Does what
This
happen?
is what beats Cable. So you've said this is what beats me. What beats me is 30 freighters. So why are people not bringing 30 freighters to beat you?
Because apparently that's too much effort for people. People
don't
want
have to.
Just warp in
what
their
I'm saying,
VNIs and grind some fucking havens, boy. That's what they want to do.
So
that's the overall problem.
If people are willing to put in the effort, they can receive the reward.
Yeah. So if there is counterplay, and also at the same time it hasn't stopped.
There is no counterplay to 30
No,
freighters
I'm saying
landing
if there's
randomly.
counterplay
There
to
really
Cable,
isn't.
you're saying this is bad because now people can counter me with 30 freighters. But
Honestly,
at the same
every
time it's not
you
happening.
said something that, like, you tried to put words in his mouth, it hasn't been what he's been saying. Please stop doing that, because
absolutely,
frustrating.
Firstly, I'm not putting words in his mouth. Secondly, Cable's able to speak for himself, and
he's trying to, and then you keep saying,
"No,
I
he's
think
not,
this is
man."
what you're really saying.
All right.
Cable will tell me.
All right, hold on a second. Hold on. I'm going to start muting. But I need you guys just to like sort each other out so I don't have to do it. Thanks.
I think you forget the point. Previously, Cable could steal the thing that dropped. Now he can't. It's impossible.
It's
not
That's the
impossible,
point.
but
Wait,
is
you gotta make up your
statistically
mind.
unlikely.
Either impossible or he's still getting them. Which
It
is
is significantly, or how to phrase it right? It is. I don't know how to phrase it properly, but it's
Are you still doing
it's beyond impractical. That's what how I would
So you're not
phrase it.
doing
It sounds like there's a home field advantage now. So
There's a
if, for
massive
example,
home
one of
field
these,
advantage.
if one of these spawns in Delve, it's not that could you bring a bunch of freighters? You probably could, but what's the likelihood you can bring 30 freighters into Delve and then fly them out? Very unlikely.
It's not even just that. How hard? Like, did you any of you guys happen to see what happened in MGAM in Vale by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
If not, then I don't blame you. Let's assume you don't. Okay. Pihor tried to run a Sotiyo. And all they did was literally lock down the system for 24 hours, bubble all the gates, and then they had like 20 people or whatever on at any given time for those 24 hours that the Sotiyo was reinforced. And there's no way anyone in the game can realistically get into the system because it's Sinojammed, there's camps on the gate, so there's no way that any smaller entity can interact with them in a meaningful way that doesn't lead to them just... What? You couldn't. How would I be able... I need to get a freighter in to
so
get the
they
loot.
invested a massive amount of time and players and everything else to ensure they
And
got
there's
the loot.
there is zero interactability to it. Unless I literally show
So,
up
and
with
before,
the same size force.
in the exact same situation, you would have been able to sit there cloaked off it in a DST and have a 95% chance of getting the loot. Correct?
You're pulling that number out of my success rate, but that's not really realistic, is it?
Yes,
That it's not-
realistic if it's your success rate.
because
that's
nobody
literally
ever
the real
tried
number.
to...
That's why it's realistic.
Vily, because nobody ever even tried to work around me. Ever. I know one group, and that's Phantomite's group. Ta-da! By the way, they got one Sotiyo, the first one they ever fucking ran, and they figured out a way to loot faster than me in a way that I could never ever counter. And there's nothing I can do to it. And they figured it out on fucking Sotiyo number 1.
All right, well, let's give some people some context on why you guys are heated about this and arguing. And I'll do it if you...
I just think it's funny.
Hold on a second.
that-
That was not an invitation for everybody to talk. I just want to get through this for a second. And that is to give people an understanding of what people are arguing about here. And that is that Sotiyos were being run and Cable was good at stealing the loot by himself. And nobody could really figure out the counterplay, although it existed, which he insists.
That's debatable, Madro.
Okay.
I've explained what it was. God damn
That's one of the disagreements that Cable says that there was a way to steal it from him, and he just cited Phantomite's group who was able to do it, and Vily who says that was not possible because Test was a victim of this as was Horde. Because they were running these sites, they would work hard for it, and their loot would be taken before they had a chance to get it, and it was very demoralizing. So people weren't running it. So CSM advised CCP to create more weight on the loot so it couldn't be carried out except for a bigger ship, more volume. And that effectively ended sneaking in and stealing it. You had to now steal it a different way. And so Vily's question to Cable was, is it better now than it was? Would you admit that? What would you say to that? And Cable insists it was better before, right?
Yes. I'm not saying that before was perfect. I definitely think that the overall mechanic was and is poor, but I think it's worse off than what it was previously. Sorry.
Do these things spawn in low sec primarily or null sec?
Both. At any given time, there's 2 low sec and 2 null sec Sotiyos at minimum, and a potential 1 extra in each low and null sec.
So in a low sec area, potentially you can bring freighters. The people running can bring freighters. The person coming to interdict can run freighters because you're not under someone's super umbrella.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So it's
there's more risk. There's more risk to running them in low sec than there is in null sec, for the most part, in regards to getting it stolen from you.
All right, I want to...
But the counterplay is more viable in low sec than in null sec also.
Yeah.
I want to bring in either Brisk or Caleb, who both got squashed out when we were trying to sort things out. So either of you guys have anything you wanted to say?
I'd just like to point out that this is just one of those examples of things introduced by CCP where it fundamentally puts a strain in the value where it creates these problems. I'm not a fan of the whole idea of this drop being that valuable. It would be better if that was easier to actually obtain and then more difficult to actually successfully produce, right? I don't understand why this of all things is where CCP has decided that this should be extremely rare and extremely difficult to source. I think there's a fundamental flaw in that, and that's why cable has been able to actually take advantage of it, and why people won't actually run them. And so just this dark spiral of not actually doing any content.
And like I said in the chat, I'm going to coin the new. This is brisk law. Any chat with Cable and Vily at some point will devolve into fighting over Blood Raider Sotiyos. And that's just the nature of the beast. As much as this is interesting to listen to, I think we also need to keep in mind that this is a 1% of the 1% of the 1% problem. Like the vast majority of people in the game,
and that's why it
will
should
never have a chance to steal one.
And that's the reason why it should never had so much focus, to be honest. Also, there's a video linked in.
Make that statement, Cable, I had a couple people who thought I was responsible for this actually message me because of these arguments we have afterwards, and
you were not.
This actually happened. Several people messaged me. They said, "Thank you for helping push through this change because it allowed me to get one of these blueprints, which helped me fund my alliance." And to me, that was a really.
I'm very curious, Vily, who that was.
Yes, because I'm going to reveal my private conversation.
I'm saying I'm very curious because
100% happened.
Just this year so far, right?
Well, this was right after the change, so.
Yeah, but just this year, since the 1st of January, there has been run, publicly known, approximately 11 Sotiyos. Right? Can you guess how many Sotiyos have actually been run?
5?
Or do you know?
I have no idea. I don't track the stuff at all.
No. So on Zkill there are 12 Sotiyo kills, so minimum 12, right? I think something like that.
Oh, there's 12 kills, okay, so.
Yeah, on Zkill, something like that. 12, 13, something, whatever. But in reality, there's actually been run almost 50. And I have run 42 of them.
So of the ones posted on Zkill, how many are yours and how many are?
Well, I mean, you'll see the one. You won't see the ones where I ran them. That's the point.
I think there's something fishy going. There's something fishy going on here, Cable. If you want to confess something, what are you trying to say?
No, he's just saying he doesn't report them to Zkill, which is fine. Like he wants to. Keep
no. That's my point. I don't get. I'm curious. People apparently have been saying, "Thank you for this. We funded our alliance because of this. We were able to do it." But I mean, honestly.
Yeah, so
from my experience, people are literally coming to me. Hey, we have a Sotiyo in our space. We know you're going to come and steal it from us if you don't. If we don't, play ball with you, or whatever. Even in your own coalition, which was very frustrating for TSK at the time. But like, I believe that what we got, that change that we got actually made fewer people willing to actually try to run it because. The hassle of getting a freighter onto that grid in any safe way is unrealistic at best.
That's an easily examinable issue. We don't. So how many? And instead of looking at percentages, just look at raw numbers. You said the 12 were not you. So before the change, how many were done by people who weren't you? If that number went up, then that means that more alliances are getting big wins and are able to fund themselves for a while.
Well, I mean, not really, no, because the only reason, like for instance, like you'll see most of the ones on Zkill are even run by me along with a friend who then sadly was on Zkill. Like for instance, Kala, Coco, that's 3. Templayer, that's 2. So those you can actually just ignore because those are also me.
Sure, so I'm
May
asking,
I-
how many?
So in reality, it's actually 6 that are left that weren't run by me.
May I ask something? I want to ask Vily a question.
Sure, go ahead.
You're a CSM, right? And you probably lobbied for that change that nerfed. How do you justify lobbying for a change that benefits you?
I've noticed no benefit from it. As Cable can attest, I don't think we've gotten any of our Sotiyos, have we, Cable?
You've gotten 1 or 2 after the change.
Oh,
and that was because they weren't on Zkill.
Okay, so we would have got them either way then, right? So I received no benefit.
Those specifically, yeah. So
okay,
effectively,
so
no.
What I'm advocating, whether it's good for me or not, is for the good of the game. And to me, the Sotiyo mechanic, as they were, was entirely creating a situation where if somebody could get a hauler, a DST hauler into a system and cloak it off of Sotiyo, and that's someone basically being Cable in this situation, that basically guaranteed that they had a 90+% chance of stealing the loot from somebody, regardless of the amount of work the owning space group or whatever was willing to put in. To me, that it seemed like a slam dunk change.
Assuming they never actually tried to counteract me in any of the ways that I even explained to them.
And I would make the argument that the methods of disruption available before were insufficient to allow for most normal groups within the game to have an opportunity to claim the loot for the effort they put.
What do you mean?
I'm just
normal?
Interested. Like, Cable belongs to the game as well, so maybe someone should have asked him, how can we counter this before you lobby for change?
I did talk to. I had a number of conversations with Cable. Cable is a great example of somebody who likes to lobby in his own interest, right? So, as much as I took his feedback in, as he's one of the people who knew it the best, it's about creating a level playing field as much as I can, right?
Vily.
Cable still gets all the loot because he's willing to put the work in, but that doesn't change the fact that the playing field is much more level now than it was before.
Vily, I was never approached in a way. How would you change this to improve it?
But did you give me? Did you have long conversations with me where you gave me all kinds of your ideas?
What your no, I went to you and said what I've seen so far of what you're proposing with the CSM is a bad idea. I came to you. You never asked what would you do then? No one ever actually approached me about it. So arguing that we had long conversation about that subject is very, very incorrect.
Asking for diagnostic data and asking for suggestions of how to approach it are two very different things. We go to the doctor and we tell them, how we feel. We don't go to the doctor and tell them, prescribe me this and prescribe me that and give me this surgery. You have to recognize.
No, but I mean, if you have an expert on a field and you have a problem within that field, wouldn't you go to that expert and say, hey, how would you do this? Because you're the expert, and no offense, and I get that this sounds super arrogant, but I'm clearly the expert on this subject.
So would you go to the bank fund hedge manager and ask them what the SEC rule should be on those bank fund hedge managers?
Yes, I would.
But here's the thing.
Can I just ask really a question that relates to what I was trying to argue, because I don't think that anyone really noticed or paid attention. The value of this thing right now is about 4 to 5 times. Okay, so why should all of that value be on the stupid blueprint drop? To me, that makes no sense. Why is there no?
Well, the value is based on the rarity.
Yeah, it's based on the rarity.
Is determined.
But why can you not get the same thing based on actually also increasing the demands on the labor on both sides, both on the actual labor on the Sotiyo to get the actual source, and on the actual labor to build it? I don't understand why it's all on that lootable thing.
To answer your question, it was given away by Larrikin at FanFest when somebody asked him the same question. He said that was by design. They wanted conflict in who gets it, just like anything else. A conflict driver of one single drop, super valuable. Is the fleet going to fight over?
How many hours of work? Okay, how many people in space would need to work if let's say it was triple the requirement to actually build? How much more activity would be in space to actually source the materials to build this thing, it would be proportionally 10 to 20 times the conflict driver of the current activity.
Well, the point is they're experimenting. Hold on a second, Brisk. One last thing. The point was they wanted people to fight over the loot against each other because it takes a group to defeat this thing, and only one person is going to get rewarded, and there were supposed to be fights over that sort of stuff. That was part of the mechanics.
But to Matterall's point, I think if that's the point, and that's what Larrikin said, and I seem to recall, you're right, that I remember him saying that, then the way that the system is working right now is wrong, and it's not working properly. Because if this was designed to create conflict, and the only thing it's doing is enriching a single person in the game to the exclusion of everybody else, then that mechanic's fucked up and needs to get fixed. But beyond that, I think the question to Vily about this, being a mechanic, you pushing for things or lobbying for stuff that you have a direct interest in, that I think goes to the heart of the biggest gripe that the average player has about the CSM, and that is this pervasive belief that everybody on there is only doing what's in their own personal interests or what's in their own alliance interests, and not putting the good of the game above all of that stuff. So I think it's very difficult to overcome that perception because it's so deeply ingrained, and it has been since the very first CSM. And I've been doing a lot of research on the history of the CSM over the last week for the show we're doing on Meta Show for Saturday. But I'll tell you, every time these changes go through, and it looks like it only benefits the people who are pushing the change, it's another nail in the coffin of the public perception of this body. It's dangerous.
Well, we have a responsibility to give good information so people can make their own judgments about what's going on. And so we should just say that Vily has not publicly said that he was lobbying for this change that went through. And
yeah, I have.
You said you were or you weren't?
Seriously.
Let me be clear. I wasn't the strongest lobbyer of the, like, I obviously can't talk about like who wanted what, whatever. Right. But I've definitely said I was in favor of this change, 100%.
So you were in favor of this change. You weren't the only one that was in favor of this change, and maybe not even the strongest voice in the room for that.
I mean, no offense, Vily, but you kind of took credit for it.
In what way?
All right, now that's to be fair.
I think
any politician is going to take credit for anything anybody says they like.
Do you want me to play the clip where Vily says you can now run your NPC Sotiyos? Because you were even there, Brisk.
So saying that you can now do it isn't the one.
Well, no, no, that's not what I'm saying either, dude. I'm saying he took credit for it.
Well, I was
like
involved.
I said, any politician is going to take credit for anything that somebody comes to them and say, "Hey, I really like this." Well, yeah, I did that.
Well, I mean,
but the point I'm trying to make is a broader one.
I've been told that Vily was the one who presented it, so like
I can 100%
brought it forth. So
without a doubt of mine that wasn't me. But regardless, I'll be happy to say I'll 100% take the heat for this. If you want to say I presented, sure, you can say that, and I'll eat all the negative press for it. That doesn't bother me.
Now, I really hope that nobody knows for a fact that you presented this, because that means there are leaks, and that makes me unhappy.
Well, no, I didn't actually, right? So it would, but
Yeah.
I think what I was trying to say is that when you're talking about things like faction blueprints, right, of any kind, I think they should actually incentivize the kind of gameplay that Cable is doing. I think the problem is that they're not easy enough to source, and I do think that the labor intensity should be on actually being able to then utilize it and build something with it.
But Caleb, if one person, and I mean literally one person, is getting 90% of the loot drops of this mechanic, is that a good thing?
So,
or does that just show how nobody was willing to actually try to stop it?
It's not a question of whether they're willing or
yes,
not.
Yes, it is. Because
no, it's not.
Honestly,
Cable.
Chris,
you're
if I'm
acting
a racer
like that.
In Formula One, and I'm the
look,
best
I'm telling
racer
you right
in the
now,
world, and everyone has the exact same car, and I am therefore winning, that doesn't make it unfair. That just means that I am the better racer.
Hey, Cable, it's pretty hard to focus on what the conversation is. You keep interrupting, dude. I'm trying to understand what's going on. So just putting that out there.
Hey, who's a fish? How's it going? All right. That's my fault then. It's not Cable. I'm not moderating well enough. I'll summarize and try to get people up to speed on what's going on.
Well, I think Brisk was trying to make a point there too, Matt.
Yeah, I was bringing it back to Brisk. You were saying what, Brisk? The larger point.
My larger point is simple. It doesn't matter whether you're the best at it or whether it's a good mechanic or whatever. I mean, in the end, if someone is making vast amounts of money being the only person taking advantage of a mechanic that was designed to drive content at the alliance level, then that's a problem of game design. And you know what? You could be the Pele, you can be the Michael Jordan, you can be the Tiger Woods, but at some point, people are going to sit back and say, well, maybe we need to change the rules because this is too easy for the best people. And I think if it's the case right now where you've got there are 12 kills and you've done another 40 that aren't reported, and the only people getting these drops are you, one person in a game of hundreds of thousands of people, that's just begging to be nerfed, right? I mean, I don't know how anybody can make an argument otherwise.
Let me catch you.
Especially considering what happened with boost nerfs and other things that other players have used that have been considered overpowered.
The next thing, not yet. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring people up to speed on what it was that Cable was so good at doing and why it was one person getting all the loot and that sort of thing. So does anyone want to explain that quickly? If not, I'll do it.
Matterall, you should run with that, and then afterwards I want to ask Caleb something.
Okay. Well, as it turns out, it takes a lot of people to defeat these Sotiyos, right? They were supposed to be big, that you could bring a giant fleet against it, and that was the idea. There'd be a lot of people fighting this structure with just a couple blueprints that drop maybe max, maybe none, maybe one, maybe two blueprints that were worth hundreds of billions. So part of the dynamic of the loot drop, I think, is they were experimenting with people being able to fight over the blueprint. But what happened instead is a Robin Hood type character comes in, maybe not Robin Hood, and he sits over the Sotiyo and he snatches it before the army, the people who defeated the Sotiyo can actually take it. So he doesn't defeat it, but he takes the loot and robs it and takes it away. Two people are affected by that because these things only exist in two areas of space. In the north and in the south.
No, they're all over.
They are now?
All nullsec, all lowsec.
Okay, they started out in just Blood Raider space and mostly test.
Matterall, no.
Okay, correct me.
They were in all nullsec space, all lowsec space.
Blood Raiders were initially only in Blood Raider space, and Guristas was intended to only be in Guristas space, but that was changed 1 month into the patch of it them being released, and then they were changed to all nullsec and lowsec, regardless of racial.
So these are everywhere. Okay.
Yes.
So now these things are everywhere. They're being run by medium or large groups. They seem to be content that multiple players can participate in. And the idea is that if one person can just hang out and steal the loot, that it ruins the gameplay of a bunch of players. And so the equation is you have one guy who's having a great time making a bunch of money, and you have a bunch of players who can't run these things because it's worthless to do it. Is that kind of the mindset of what was wrong with the situation when CSM brought this up? Is this what Cable was doing? Is this what he was known for? Is this what was happening? Is this why it was a problem?
I would argue there's a slight nuance to what you said that needs to be changed. That I just did it, assuming the people running it had no intention of trying to stop me. They didn't actually do anything to try to intervene in the process.
They didn't counterplay you well enough. They didn't
even try to counterplay me realistically.
Or they didn't know how, or they didn't try, whatever. They didn't do it. So you were able to be very successful at this.
Correct.
Okay, so
if I can ask Caleb, and I kind of want to address Caleb and Brisk's point. So Brisk was saying that the reward for this, is essentially going. The lion's share of it is going to one player, and that is poor game design. If the mechanics support this, and if this is what's happening, then that is a poorly designed piece of content and should be modified. And what Caleb was saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you want the benefit from this, the reward in whatever form it takes, to be more distributed, and part of it is in the killing and the looting, and part of it is in using it afterwards, so that whoever actually gets the loot still gets a little bump, a nice little reward, but you want that reward to be spread out across a larger group, because that reward happens after the looting. Is that what you were saying, or no?
Well, basically, just to compare, in the past, you needed to actually skill your character quite high if you wanted to start doing Tech 2 or Tech 3 production, right? Faction stuff, for some reason, has practically no requirements when it comes to actual skills when you want to build it. This makes no sense to me, because it is something that is valued a lot more by the people that want to buy it and use it on the field. So I don't understand why CCP has not put higher requirements to actually build this, both on skill levels, which maybe don't really mean anything anymore, but also on the actual hours required in materials to actually create it. And this is back to the fact that when I started seeing Mercurial fleets, I knew that there was a problem with the fact that we had gamed it, so you could pretty much get the prints almost without any problem, right? This is just CCP is creating these things, and I just don't think that you should have a rarity of a print that makes it so much more valuable than any other component in that thing. I said in chat, I don't think a blueprint copy of any faction stuff should be more than 10 to 20% of the total value. The rest should be in everything else, in the requirements to skill, in the requirements to source, and actually build it.
Right. So if that
so
happened,
it seems like
the
the argument on playstyle is, one playstyle is you want to be able to interdict loot, and using smart gameplay can get you an advantage and get you profit. On the other side, you have a bunch of players who show up at an event, they invest time and feel they should get reward based on their time investment. And
hold on, I lost sound here for some reason.
And the point is that if blueprint copies were the ninja loot item,
Araya was trying to finish a point.
So, but I think that the issue is and trying to steal loot. I don't want CCP to spend time on something that's going to just benefit a few people. I'd rather them spend dev time on something else.
Yes, that's true.
That's what I said.
So I think that the fact that this particular piece of content only speaks to a small number of players, yes, is a problem. And I kind of like what Caleb was saying, where the gameplay involved in this blueprint should extend further than the killing and
all right,
looting.
well, it appears we have lost sound. We'll have to figure out why Discord decided to go mute. If I can't hear it, the chances are you can't. Unless you guys can hear it, let me know in chat.
Hi, we can hear.
Can hear you.
Yeah, they can hear you. Let me listen to the stream.
Sorry, I'm talking over people. We'll continue with the program. You guys can hear. I can't, but we will continue.
In chat, they're saying it's good. In chat, they're saying it's all good.
May I say something? First of all, I think the content should be for more people than Caleb and a few percentage. Like, it has to be possible for more people to engage in that content. And I want to apologize to Vily if I asked maybe like I'm sorry for attacking you, but I wanted to ask a hard question, and the only thing I really wanted to get around to is if someone advocates for a nerf of some people or some people's playstyle, the people who are argued about and should be nerfed should be asked too. That's all I'm saying, because they are part of the game as well, and maybe
I would agree. If you allow me to answer. So I would agree to that to a degree, but it's important to remember, like the CSM as an institution, if somebody brings up something that's incredibly self-serving, like say, I think we should nerf Cable, and you look around the table and everybody's like, the CSM as an whatever Cable's doing is moderately balanced. Everybody at the table is going to go like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, and people would call people in, would be like, "Nah, I think you're going for your own self-interest, whatever." Like the CSM is incredibly good at like self-policing those kind of issues. However, if you have a situation where everybody looks at an issue and they're like, "This is imbalanced. It's obvious it's imbalanced," you create a situation where that's where you're much more likely to see change. When it comes to asking the person about the mechanics, there's a degree of truth to that. As I said, I didn't initiate a chat with Cable, but I definitely had some chats with Cable, 100%. And I felt like myself and the other members of the CSM who talked about this issue had a pretty good understanding of the issue at the point where discussions were had. I personally think the solution we have now is significantly better than the situation we had before the change. And that's why I even started this conversation. I'm like, are you willing to admit now that the changes have been good? They've allowed for play and counterplay. You're still getting all the rewards because you're willing to put the work in, but there is play and counterplay now. Cable disagreed. That's fine. But in general, yeah, like I'm always willing to listen to people when we talk about the mechanics that are they know about, 100%.
I mean, kind of shut down the conversation before it even got started when we had it because you didn't want to hear it when I was actually explaining to you things that I wanted to propose. You didn't want to hear it.
Cable, true or false? You can be a bit abrasive when you try to talk to people.
I can be abrasive.
I have a quick question. For Cable, I had a quick question.
Sure.
So, because I'm obviously really new, and so I don't really understand the full scope of the mechanics. But to me, what you were saying, it sounds like no one created any kind of strategy to try to get their loot back. I guess was it not possible for anyone to try to get their loot back from you?
It's not the question of like getting it back, because if it's gone, it's gone. Like, if I got it, I'm probably at that point already warping off and so on. But it's a question like a lot of people, most of the people who are complaining about it have a focus surrounding the very instant of the Sotiyos death, where which I was faster than other individuals at picking up the item, putting it into my hold, and then following that warping off the grid.
Yeah, but did nobody like prepare? Like, I mean, obviously this is something you were doing like often, so no one prepared for that, or they would just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
That is exactly what it was, from my view at least.
I don't really necessarily see anything wrong with you stealing the loot. I think it makes more sense, like, for people to try to protect themselves so that they don't have the loot stolen in the first place. Like, isn't there the ability to do that? I mean, I'm assuming there
wasn't this part of the problem.
But that it's not true, Vily, though. That is simply
you say that's not
true.
true every time, but we have literal videos of you looting within 0.43 microseconds. Like, it's like
what? That's just impossible, friend. Like that is quite legitimately impossible.
Like within 0.43 of a second, right?
No.
Okay, well, you posted that video. Are you willing to show it again?
That is game-wise impossible.
Are you willing to re-show the video you had of the Sotiyo looting there?
Which one?
The one you were doing to show, how legit it was. Your looting of the Sotiyo.
Oh, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, let me find it, I guess.
Hey, just why don't you tell us? Okay,
where the fuck that was?
that mechanic is already like changed. So, can you tell us yet how you did it?
I think I already have once, but I mean, sure.
You made a video of it, right? You want to link that to me?
Yeah, I straight up made a video explaining exactly how I did it. So okay.
Yeah, give us a video and tell us how you did it.
All right. I'll see if I can find it somewhere. It has to be somewhere.
And Master Thief Cable is going to show us how he used to steal the blueprints right under the nose of groups that would defeat Sotiyos.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that because that seems like cool. Like, honestly, from what I've understood a lot about EVE players is that like they're kind of difficult because they exploit things. So, I mean, not saying that you were exploiting some. I mean, maybe you were. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it just seemed. I guess I feel like from what I understand so far about Eve, it seems like people still could have avoided you stealing their shit. Like, or do you, Cable, do you know how you would have defeated you from stealing your own loot if you were in the reverse role?
Yes. And I've also explained that on several streams publicly multiple times. One of the easiest things were, if you have a guy, say Sotiyo comes out, whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning, so 8 a.m. And I wake up at, say, 1 a.m. I park a max skilled probing character. It doesn't necessarily have to be max skilled, but obviously the higher skill, the better, the easier, yada yada, all that stuff. And a hyperspatial saber, nanofibered, with a scram and bubbles and guns and whatever. On this grid. So they're sitting, say, like a couple thousand kilometers off the Sotiyo, and they're just sitting there cloaked up, both of them. They're in squads so that the co-ops can fleet warp the saber onto any given target. Let's say a wild Cable comes along in a DST, and he warps to the Sotiyo grid and cloaks up. If you have a slight bit of timing or max skill, so you can just maximum probe, because you know where you are, so you obviously just probe with minimum range on top of yourself continuously. You will get guaranteed, because of the time it takes for someone to cloak, you will get a probe scan result literally where the what's it called, the DST is before he cloaks, if you just time it slightly right. And then you fleet warp the saber to it, and the saber literally just approaches the DST before it decloaks. And then you decloak it, bubble up, scram, and then you just wait until the rats either kill it or you. And then the DST dies afterwards. And then you have another saber, or if you get away with the saber, or something similar. Because the only way that the DST could get away realistically in time is MJDing. And if you MJDs right away, you just scram it, fails the MJD, and then you bubble again, and then you just burn the saber away and warp off back to that ping the way you were before, and the rats have now killed the DST. Or you bring in some other ship to actually kill the DST before the rats come and do the job for you. And that's one of many ways of countering DSTs entering a Sotiyo grid. There's actually an instance where me and a friend did it for like 7 hours straight, and we were just watching series on Netflix. I'm like, oh, someone came and look, and we killed 17 DSTs in that 7-hour period. So yeah.
Yeah, so what Cable just described is one way you could do it, where you have to watch the system for 8 hours straight, and if you miss a 5-second window, then the hauler gets on grid, which is also counterable by just simply having 2 DSTs warp in 3 seconds.
And so no one ever tried this, like, and
people tried this, absolutely.
I've never experienced anyone doing exactly that towards me ever. I've seen probers themselves warp to me and decloak me, and then I simply warp to another bookmark and repeat. We had to repeat the process because those probers obviously didn't have any real way of tackling me, because it's a scanning ship and not a tackle ship per se. So then the dance switches back and forth until one of us fucked up, in which case, in this scenario, probably them, because they didn't have any preparation of, say, bringing a dictor. Or, of course, again, if you are you're not paying attention at the moment, and therefore I can slip by. I mean, yeah, of course, but I mean, it means you have to not pay attention for like more than 15, 20 seconds, because it's not like a DST warps inherently super fast.
So is there another jackpot in the game that resembles this, where it is so much concentrated value in a single item, or is this pretty much
Incursions, Revenants?
Okay, so those have a similar jackpot, but as far as
it's not quite as wild, but yeah.
Right. Well, I'm including like
that at all.
Yeah, I'm including accessibility. You know, how frequently it shows up, etc. Because the drop rate is 100%, but it's very high. So I think that this. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is effectively the biggest single jackpot in the game, is it not?
Certainly, yeah.
Right. So that is why there's so much contention surrounding this particular thing. It's not just because it's a 1% of 1% of 1%. It's because this represents the pinnacle of the jackpots. And I still like what Caleb said earlier, and it speaks to what Brisk said, which is all the value is being gained by one player. The value deserves to be there, but perhaps the jackpot should be spread out between the combat and looting and the actual use of the item. and that would kind of balance it, because then people wouldn't really mind quite so much if Cable got all of them, because they'd just buy it from him, and more of the value would be in the rest of the process.
Well, that could be a recommendation that we make to CCP. It was made right when this thing was announced. They again, Larrigan said from the stage pretty much like, yeah, that's part of the gameplay. I think they're experimenting with reward mechanisms and conflict. So that might have been an experiment that they haven't decided to alter. They also did.
The video is posted in voice chat, by the way. Sorry, I found it.
So are you saying even if someone was able to get your ship and kill you or like attack you, would the loot not drop back to them, or like?
Oh no, I'm talking like before the Sotiyo actually got like destroyed or anything. This is just like getting the whole principle is you got the DST onto the grid and cloaked it up, and then you sat next to the Sotiyo structure until it died, and then you decloak and then pick up the loot and warp off.
Yeah, the counterplay is not reactionary. The counterplay is proactive. It's preparation and watching and all that stuff.
But Fonsui, I only gave this was one thing. That is a proactive thing.
Right.
That is a proactive thing. Sure.
No,
that's
I'm
only
asking
one
if,
of
if
many.
I'm correct in saying. So you have been saying until now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that once you get the loot, then the vast majority of the counterplay is no longer available. Like they have to counterplay. I'm not saying it's not there. They have to counterplay you before you actually get it. They have to watch and be prepared, etc. That would you say that's correct? Okay, and I'm not arguing. That's just
to a big degree, yes.
That's just a clarification I wanted to make sure, because I feel like because who is the fish was asking, how do they get their loot back and everything, and the answer is maybe they can get it back, maybe they can't, maybe they could prevent it, maybe they can't, but the after the fact is after the fact, and the vast majority of the counterplay is before.
I mean, look, I said this before, and I'll repeat it because I think it bears repeating in all of these conversations. Babe Ruth did not hit a home run every time he went up to bat. Michael Jordan didn't sink a three every time he threw a shot. Tiger Woods is not getting holes in one every single time he steps up to the pin. I mean, the idea that this mechanic is balanced because there is potential, but the only person who's ever been able to make that counterplay effective is the same person who's getting 90% of the loot. Guys, this mechanic's broken.
But
I don't know how you can argue that it's not
because
broken.
Hydra and PL kept winning.
But they
didn't.
That
much more.
That's the point. They didn't.
But they did though for
other
like
people
7 years.
Were able to. Out of how many? 15. Okay, they won half the time, not 90% of the time. I mean, even there's only been one team of football that's won every game in a season. Nobody else has done that. I mean, look, I'm just saying.
But did they change the rules of the game then?
So much of that argument.
Yeah, they did actually. They changed the point values every year.
So much of that argument is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of like how the Sotiyos work, and nobody in here is saying that it's a good mechanic as it stands. There's tons of problems with it, so you're kind of arguing against nobody there. But the key thing is like the reason he runs 95% of them is he's the only one who sits there with scanner alts going through all of the regions in the game, checking for Sotiyos all of the time, because any other large alliance isn't willing to go and try and find Sotiyos in enemy space and try and run them, and most small groups don't have the resources to start sticking dread and freighter caches in the places you would need to stick them in order to be able to run most of those Sotiyos.
Well, that's not true though, right? Like the mechanic previously, there was no real counterplay, despite what Caleb may say.
I didn't mention the previous mechanic.
Okay, so but I'm just setting up my.
Ignoring what I'm
please
saying.
allow me to finish my.
Let's let Vily get the whole thing.
So there was basically no counterplay previously. Now, yes, Cable still gets the vast majority of them because he's willing to put in the work, and that doesn't bother me at all. What does bother me is that if a small alliance or what makes me happy, or the goal of the changes was that if a small alliance is willing to put in the work, and they can get the loot if they're willing to sino-jam the system, block off some of the gates, put in a little effort to make sure they have a freighter or two, they can ensure that they actually have a good chance of getting the loot. Doesn't mean they're guaranteed it, but they have a good shot. And
right now, the answer to that question is probably no.
What question?
If that Sotiyo ends up on C-Kill in any way, shape, or form, the only way that smaller group was running it was with dreads, and those dreads will die to anyone who even feels slightly inclined to kill them. I know this because I've either been on grid and watched those dreads die multiple times, or I've just straight up gone it and done it myself because I had a minor inclination not to even want the loot. I just wanted 3 blingy dread kills, and there was nothing the enemy could do about it.
All right, so we're having a good time, so I'm going to keep this rolling. We'll keep streaming. I'm going to bring up Dirk McGurk to moderate in my absence for a bit, and I'll be back in a while.
Yeah, you can absolutely kill the dreads, and a lot of people, that's why they use Titans for them, right? And the Titans are vulnerable as well.
Runs them with Titans anymore because people have realized that all you need is about 20 sabers, and one of those supers will die.
Yeah, absolutely.
All you need is 1 saber, my friend.
1 saber probably isn't enough, but unless
I can prove you wrong. I've killed 7 Titans so far. 2 of them initiative, and 2 of them PL.
Alright, so a couple of... How many sabers on grid is irrelevant. The fact is
yeah.
that nobody wants to run them in supers anymore if the Sotiyo is known about, because it's almost impossible. Well, it is functionally impossible to prevent sabers from getting into a system, and the sabers,
not correct
once they're in there, can very easily kill your type supers just by bubbling them to death.
Much as Cable described, Horde set up a simple gate camp in the system, they cynogemmed the system, and they were able to run their Sotiyo and collect their...
bridge 20 or 50 bombers on them, and all 3 Jeds are dead.
140. Sorry.
So maybe the issue is that they're too easy to find. I mean,
yeah, the fact that they're
like
publicly available on Zkill is definitely an issue with them for sure. I still personally think, like much as Caleb has said, there should be more focus on some of the other components. But I like the goal with the Sotiyos. I think is that there's always been a goal to have some content around them, for them to be a focal point that people fight over. But the problem is the content was so difficult, you can't run them with anything subcapital because the diamond rats are not forgiving, let's say.
This whole time you've all been arguing about the looting mechanics, when the looting mechanic isn't the component of it that prevents content. The component of it that prevents content is that by and large you need a very specialized setup to run them, and because you cannot have subcapital support on grid in a meaningful way, you essentially limit the options for dealing with any sort of attempt to kill your effort to run it are super, super limited.
I 100% agree, Murray.
Like, the fact that you've been arguing for an hour about this and yelling at Cable for an hour about this has really confused me, because when I wanted to kill Dreads running a Sotiyo, I dropped 2 long-range Dreads on them, and my 2 long-range Dreads shot explosive damage at EM Therm Tank Dreads, and they immediately died. And the enemy had a Munin fleet. That Munin fleet warped in. It immediately died because all the rats said, "Ooh, subcaps," and just cleaned them out instantly, and they had to warp off. So my dreads just left. Like, for whatever reason, the rats decided not to tackle us, and we just signed out because there's nothing the enemy could do to touch us.
Yeah, you can definitely kill them. Just to answer some points in chat, you definitely can kill them with subcaps. It's just, it's not a good equation, let's say.
And that's why, the vast majority of Sotiyos that get run don't show up on Zkill, because as soon as a Sotiyo shows up on Zkill, it doesn't get run if it has not already.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I've watched 3 or 4 Sotiyos within me, or within range of where I live, disappear because of time, because nobody was willing to run them after they'd been discovered.
I mean, some part of this, I think, is probably a self-fulfilling, prophecy. If everybody just assumes that if you take the time, go out there, run these things, Cable's going to steal the loot anyway, they're not going to run them, right?
It's not about loot theft. It's
it absolutely is.
But that's the result, Murray. That's the thing.
So it's not about, you never get to the point of stealing loot, because if you have anybody in the area who doesn't like you and they found out that you were trying to run a Sotiyo because it showed up on Zkill, either you lost a scouting ship on it, or somebody just died in the system ratting. As soon as they know there's a Sotiyo, they're going to keep eyes on it. You only need to check it once every day.
But that's not actually true, Murray, because in the middle of the Fraternity War, in the kind of no man's land between Fraternity and Test, there was actually Sotiyo that we it's not like they're the vast majority of cases, yeah, people don't want to invest the true effort required to run these things. But there is cases where, they can be run, in a combat situation.
Was that Sotiyo scouted on Zkill?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have a few.
We got no loot. It was very sad.
I think there was one in Pure Blind that did eventually get run despite multiple.
I'm 100% happy to admit that is the exception more than the rule. 100%.
Yeah, that is the exception for sure. Like, of the 7 or 8 Sotiyos I've seen in recent memory, I can name one that got run without very extensive deals being made to prevent people from messing with it.
I'm just telling you guys, at some point, I think this is going to get nerfed into the ground because, and I recognize that Cable has developed and has outlined a variety of potential counters to this. He sounds very much like Pando and I did when we explained how there are plenty of counters to Bushing and Bush Ravens and Bush Stuka fleets, but in the end, nobody gave a shit and it got nerfed anyway. So just enjoy it while it lasts, because I doubt it's going to last much longer if it's still going to keep going the way that it's going.
By the way, I read, did you write something up for CSM risk?
Before the whole thing started, I wrote a long article about if you're interested in running, what you need to know and what to be prepared for and how to do it. So that went up on INN.
Yeah, I read that. It was very interesting.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And then, of course, he's got his full-fledged website.
Of course, if you're going to run, you got to run right. Got to do everything. That's fine. Despite the fact that, this is a perfect example. I love the fact that Vily is here and he has been on this show almost every day. He was on Trash Talk Tuesday last night. He doesn't have to campaign. He's going to win no matter what he does. But he's still here putting in the effort. I appreciate that. So good on you, Vily, for actually campaigning.
I don't even see it as he's campaigning. I see it as Vily just doing what he's been doing throughout his term on the CSM, which is being out there and talking.
Yeah, this is no different. Vily has been very present and very.
That's what I'm saying. I appreciate that.
He does. I feel it's important to defend both the actions we took and the general. I don't know. I made when I started on the CSM, I said I'll take I'll back everything we do. Every change you release CCP, I'll back it 100%. As long as we're making changes, I'll be happy. And I haven't always agreed with them, but I 100% support every decision CCP's made, and I'll stand it here on the firing line as long as it takes to help make the game better. And people don't always like the decisions the way I think the game should go. I 100% track that. I understand I have biases, and I do my best to always work around those. But and poor old Mecha will definitely say, yeah, you're biased against everything. He's my favorite guy. But the reality is we all come from different points of view, which means we all have different opinions. And I'm just doing my best to express my opinion and my belief and my understanding based on my experience in EVE. And I know not everybody likes that, but just doing what I can.
So I'm sure that everyone's kind of already mentioned it, but can you reiterate now exactly what the change is? So before, I know now Cable was able to steal loot. Now I'm assuming he's not. What's been the biggest change, I guess, and why can't Cable do that anymore?
Well, okay, it was a surgical change. One precise thing was changed. So Vily is going to talk about that.
Yeah. So basically, what we did is the size of the container that dropped the high value jackpot blueprint was changed. That required a freighter versus a deep space transport ship, which means that freighters are very slow, very vulnerable, basically changed the situation where before a DST would sit cloaked within range of the Sotiyo. So when the Sotiyo explodes, the DST presses uncloak, loot, gone. Now with a freighter, it changes the situation where much more becomes about who can control the grid. Because for a freighter to be on grid before the Sotiyo explodes means that the diamond rats can in theory kill it, although they don't always target freighters. There's a variety of things around the situation. It creates a situation where it's much more about grid control versus who can press decloak loot quick enough. And that was meant to make the gameplay a little more, play and counterplay. Cable still gets a large percentage of these because he's willing to put in the work. He's willing to, hide the freighters in system, log them off, warp them in, do a ton of work to get that loot. And amen to him. But the mechanics now allow for, groups who put in the work to attack the Sotiyo also to engage in measures to control the grid so that they can have a chance to loot the Sotiyo.
The precise mechanical change was just one thing, and it's that now there's only one ship in the game that's capable of grabbing the loot box, and it's the freighter.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Before you could use just about all sorts of stuff, and obviously deep space transport was the choice. And now it's you must have a freighter or you can't take this thing.
Hey,
The
Dirk.
barrier to entry of theft is far, far higher than it used to be. But with the current mechanics of how things occur, with people either choosing to grief others running Sotiyos, or mechanics of them getting scanned, unless they are not showing up on Zkill, they almost never get run.
All right, so this is an interesting change. To do that, they needed to increase the volume. So you have a blueprint that's incredibly heavy, essentially, right?
That's no, the blueprint container is heavier.
Yeah, the strong box.
I see.
And in a lot of cases, what you actually see in some of the situations where Cable has still stolen from people who are running these, he would warp in with the freighter, take the blueprint out of the container, eject it, and grab it with an interceptor.
Yeah, if you can grab the container with the freighter doesn't have to hold the container. You can just turn that into, open it up, and then anything can carry what's inside.
Yeah, Dirk McGurk. I was thinking the same thing. It's a giant blueprint that's super heavy.
It's a really big blueprint.
Yeah.
Well, it's the blueprint vault, right?
Yeah,
in
the lockbox.
lore sense or whatever. Yeah.
The safe.
Well, I believe it's called a strong box.
Oh, whatever. Okay. I'm calling it a safe.
I mean, we're just trying to shoehorn lore in now.
I mean, couldn't this all have effectively been prevented just by adding a hacking necessity to the end loot?
Yeah, they
there's a variety of ways they could have done it.
Yeah, variety.
At the time, in terms of trying to get fixes done with CCP, it was just change these numbers. It requires no dev time. This is the simplest fix to try and make things a little better, right? It's not a perfect solution by any means. As Murray's talked about, there's a variety of issues with the Sotiyo mechanics, where in terms of the PvE difficulty is just so insanely high that it doesn't lead to a good mechanical kind of play field. I don't know how to describe it, which is a big part of the problem.
Because some of it is actually very, very interesting. Because for people who haven't run them in Dreads before, at least in my experience, the challenging thing isn't getting a Dread fit properly on the Sotiyo, tanking it. The trick is actually figuring out how to extract. Because now you have 3 Capgun Dreads on a Sotiyo, where all of them are pointed by enemy rats. And so some people tried to juggle Warp Core stab refits.
The rats despawn after 15 minutes, did they not?
If they're still shooting things, they don't, to the best of my knowledge.
My understanding is that 15 minutes after the Sotiyo dies, the rats despawn.
That's the Sotiyo death, but the initial reinforced, the Sotiyo is still there.
Oh yeah, usually the initial reinforced people try to do a super still, is my understanding.
Yeah, well, some people don't have access to supers or don't have 5 supers lying around in enemy space, so a lot of people do run them with Dreads.
Well, this is part of the place where I was curious why no one talked to me about all these things, because you can't run them in supers anymore.
Well, I mean, the old super carrier on an Astra trick is...
No. I'm telling you, you cannot run NPC Sotiyos with super carriers anymore. You physically cannot.
Why not?
Because the rats' aggro mechanics have been changed,
so
and they now murder the shit out of fighters.
But you can still run them with Titans.
Yeah, when we say super...
I invite you to do it, my friend. That's all I gotta say. That is sketchy at best.
Well, the reason as Murray brought up, that most of them don't get run is because there's no easy way to run them when they're sighted. But you can look at the most recent Sotiyo kill in Lowsec, which was unsighted, and what was it run by?
Oh, I mean, I was
how
there.
do they get run now? And Cable, you adjusted, and you're still.
It was run by Titans.
I adjusted very much so. Yeah, sure.
Cable always used dreads, though.
And that's not true. I initially used Titans and Brews, but yeah.
Well, when you had access to what, Dronelands, because Volta was listed out there, makes sense. Yeah, but I mean, anything he's run since Volta went back to wormholes is going to be with dreads.
Yep.
Got it. All right. Dirk McGurk, you still here? Are we still having fun?
I'm still here.